I'm a wellness coach. Got it. I'm a wellness coach, and I'm also the director of special projects with the arts and medicine. So I take great pleasure in welcoming you to day 5 and to the second session that we're having today in the National Arts and Health Conference. I'm sure that if you've been participating, it's been very eye-opening for you, as it has been for us, I must say. So going straight up into today's session, today we're going to be talking about aging in Nigeria. And our topic is protecting the rights of the aged. And we're going to have a policy discussion. In February 2021, February of this year, the Nigerian government approved a national policy for the aging. And this was put forward by the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development. And obviously with different bodies that also help them. But from this conversation, we're going to gain a clearer picture on the current situation and on the way forward. So we're going to have 2 panel discussions. And with me for the first part of the discussion, we're going to have Senator Dr. Darlington Eze Ajoku, who is the president of the Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons and Nigeria. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. How are you? It's good to be here.
I'm well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It's great to have you. And the other another panelist we have with us. Good afternoon. The other panelist that we have for this session is Dr. Ajike Etumadu, who is a board certified geriatrician and also board member of Arts and Medicine Fellowship. Dr. Etumadu, welcome. How are you today? Okay, she's not online with us yet, but she'll join us as we go along. And then we have Dr. Cheluchi Onyeme Lekwe. I hope I didn't do too badly with your name, Doctor. Who's a PhD holder and also with the Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundations and managing partner at Ethics and Law Consulting. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Hello, good afternoon.
Cheluchi, I hope I didn't.
Yes, Cheluchi is fine.
I hope I got your name right.
We can work on that after the session.
Okay, thank you. And then for the second half of the session, and I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Ms. Olaton Gabby Williams, who's a trustee with the Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundations. Hello, Ms. Gabby Williams. Thank you for joining us today. And then for the second half, we have Dr. Ifeanyi Nsofo, who is the Director of Policy and Advocacy with the Nigerian Health Watch. He hasn't joined us yet, but the second session will commence after about an hour, just so that we can break up the conversation. So the first half of the conversation is for us to understand the current situation, what's going on with our elderly ones, and then what the policy is touching on. And then for the second half, we're going to dig into the policy as in, okay, so how is this going to be implemented? So as much as we have two panels, when we have the question and answer, please feel free to share your questions with us, to share your feedback with us. You can put it in the questions section, and also you can also raise your hand to also add anything to it. So for the first part, Dr. Senator Eze Ajoku, Dr. Etumadu, and Dr. Cheluchi, we're going to be taking the first session. And I'm just going to give us a little background for everyone that might not know what's going on. So our statement of premise, or our background statement, is Nigeria is the largest Black country in the world. The United Nations projects that by 2050, Nigeria will have a total population of 400 people, 400 million people, and will be the third most populous country in the world, behind India and China. So our current population is roughly about 200 million Nigerians, and almost 10 million of those are projected to be in the elderly demographic from 65 years old and above. And it's projected by 2050, we will have 28.9, so I can go ahead and say 29 million people in the elderly demographic. And so whatever systems that are being put in place today is not only to safeguard the elderly that we have now, it's even the population that is still coming right behind it. Recent situation analysis, which is also in the policy report that we received, is that the number of aging population in Nigeria, they need care. There's a lot of care. There are identified challenges in social, health, economical, and financial. And also with the economic changes, the urbanization that is going on, all of these have affected our elderly ones. And so the focus of the national policy was to capture Nigeria's response to these emerging issues on aging. And the vision of the policy is to have a society where older persons are guaranteed security, independence, participation, comprehensive care, and self-fulfillment and dignity, which is a very noble policy. So I'm going to go to you, Senator Ezia Joko, because you were very instrumental. I know that Ropin was very instrumental in the passing of this, in the putting together of this policy and the passing of it. So, sir, what are your, I'll just go straight to you. What are your thoughts on this policy? And if you can please give us maybe an overview of what was the situation before this policy. Why was this policy such a passionate project for you?
Thank you very much for being here. Of course, the Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons in Nigeria, it's made up of all organizations, CSOs, NGOs, faith-based retirement groups, and everyone who is working with older persons in Nigeria. We felt at the time that we needed a coalition because individual groups working on their own did not have the necessary synergy to be able to get government attention. And so we felt that we needed a bigger voice by coming together, and that has worked for us. So the coalition is everyone now who is doing one thing or the other about older persons. And I'm glad that the national policy on aging was one of the first things we focused on. And the second thing was the bill on the rights and privileges of the older persons in Nigeria. And because we are discussing the national policy now, you'll find that before then there was nothing you can hold as a policy for older persons. And you then find that older persons were excluded in developmental plans and initiatives. And everybody just talked about older persons, but you cannot lay your hand on any policy. And you will appreciate that it's important always to have policies, because what the policy does for you is that the policy is a call to action, either by MDAs or state or local government, and it directs various institutions to draw from the policy framework and add value in their different areas. And therefore, having the national policy on aging is very good for us. And when you look at the original vision, you have ably told us what the vision is. And the goal of the policy, as you know, is to uphold the rights and dignity of older persons by providing age-friendly environment that maximizes their potentials for self-fulfillment through positive change in perception about aging. Also improving the quality of life for older persons, establishing regulatory mechanisms on aging issues, guaranteeing adequate and sustainable income security, ensuring healthy aging, upholding the human rights of older persons, helping to develop data and effective research that addresses older persons' accessibility to health, social services, strengthening the partnership among all relevant sectors for effective delivery of programs for older persons. So that's what the policy goals were, and you have talked about the vision, and we're happy that we now have a policy. And of course, the main thrust of the policy, as you know, is to have a strategic intervention in the following key areas: one, income, healthcare, food, nutrition, gender, housing, water, power, transportation, recreation, social contact, social, cultural, and political participation. And those are the main thrust of it. So now that we have it, next step is to get it, make it operational. We need to make it operational.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry to interrupt you, sir. You mentioned, I wanted to ask a quick question just to get clarity on something that you had said. You had mentioned that part of the things that the Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons of Nigeria wanted to deal with was to have a bill passed and to have a policy. And I just wanted to, for the sake of those that don't know the difference between a bill passing and a policy, as in what's the difference between the two of them? And so is a bill something that we still have to go back and deal with for older people?
No, a bill is an act of parliament, okay? A bill is an act of parliament, whereas a policy can be done in the MDAs, ministries. You and I can develop any policy. But for it to, when it's a bill, it becomes a law, and you can sue and be sued on the basis of the provisions of the bill.
Okay.
So we are glad that we are at the point where we might have the benefit of both, because when you look at both the bill, which Kosropin wrote and submitted in National Assembly, which has been passed by the Senate, and the policy also, they significantly are aimed at the same thing, to ensure the welfare and well-being and dignity of the older persons, and ensuring that their rights are protected, and that something is done about the current marginalization of older persons across the boards. And of course, what some of those marginalizations are in the areas of healthcare, social security, and the rest of it.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'll just go to Dr. Cheluchi. What are your thoughts on the policy that was just passed?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here discussing this extremely important, but unfortunately, before now neglected topic. I'll start by saying that the policy is an amazing step. It's new. It's great. It's something that we have needed for a long time. And I would like to congratulate all the parties that were involved in making sure that this came into being, and appreciating the Senator and Kosroping for all the work that went into bringing this to fore. The length of time that it's taken for us to get here obviously tells you how neglected this has been. We've always had older people in Nigeria, despite the fact that our life expectancy is in the 50s for both men and women. There's very many old people. I'll start with my dad, who is in his 80s, with my grandmother, who was just buried yesterday at the age of 95. That just tells you that this is very much, this is very much needed, and it's unfortunate that it's only getting to be done in 2021. That said,
can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
What was the situation before this? Because you've mentioned it like 2 or 3 times as in neglected. So what was happening before?
What was happening before? What was happening before was that it was completely neglected. It wasn't particularly talked about. Those of us who work in the development space, for example, know that, we've talked about how we're a youthful nation, how we have young people. You hear things like nothing for us without us, and that's usually in relation to young people. There are other demographics we can talk about gender and other issues that have come up quite a bit, but issues around older care and elderly care, even when you do the research, just do a simple Google search, you will see, for those of us who are in academia, that there's much less written. So it's been neglected from whatever, we're looking at it from a policy,
from all angles,
from an academic angle, from a data angle. That's not something that we have approached. And that has reflected both in our policy, in the policy response, in the state of the law when it comes to older persons. And obviously, like I'd mentioned, given my personal examples, we've always had older people with us. So just to answer that question. So to carry on, unless you have any other question.
No, please carry on.
Yeah, so we're thankful, of course, that we have this. And I have to say that it does a very good job of addressing many of the issues when it comes to older persons. I think maybe in some places, maybe there could be more strengthening, but this is a really good foundation to start with. Looking at all those issues, Senator has kindly listed the objectives of the bill and of the policy and the goal of the policy. And what we now await is to see how these things will be implemented. I'm happy you asked the question earlier about the difference between the bill and the policy. I'm a lawyer, so by background, so maybe that's something I can speak to a little bit more. I think it's important to have both, and the two of them serve very different functions. So, for example, I mean, as he rightly noted, a bill is a document that is in the process of being made law. Okay, and so when we talk about a bill, that means it's in the House of Assembly, it's in the National Assembly, and it's hopefully going to come out of there and receive assent and become a law. And there are some important things about laws. One of the things that laws do is to set the standard. This is what will happen. Usually the law talks about the minimum standard that must be upheld. It also gives that sense of legitimacy, that sense of sustainability. So a policy usually has a time frame that it's going to last. But the law, it remains in place until it is repealed, and there's a procedure for doing that, and maybe something else replaces it. So what it then does is to guarantee us some level of sustainability. I'm saying this because, of course, we're hoping that we will keep pushing forward that bill that the senator mentioned. For a policy is more, like you mentioned, a document that is prepared by the government to show its commitment to a particular issue, and to, in a bit looser language, address a little more of the issues in a little more depth than a law would probably do, and perhaps give a time frame, have an action plan that says this is how we're going to accomplish some of these things that we intend. The law will probably say things like, you cannot do this. If you do this, we will punish you. You understand? The law can also establish a fund, can establish certain mechanisms and put them in place in a solid way that a policy may not be able to. So that we do have quite a bit on our hands to see that what we currently have in the policy is implemented, but also the need for us to move forward and see if we can get a law in place. I've not seen this bill in question, but I'm also hoping that it has taken into account some of the bills that we already have, or rather laws that we already have in place, whether you're looking at the Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Act, or you're looking at things like the National Health Insurance Scheme Act and things like that, to ensure that some of the rights that are already in place in those kinds of laws are also now, solidified and, brought together in a coherent way to apply directly to persons, older persons in Nigeria. I'm going to stop there for a second, see if you have any question, but I'm happy to continue.
I actually had a question because you mentioned something about time frames, that policies usually have a time frame around them. So I'm wondering, I guess for implementation and things like that, I'm wondering if we have a time frame for this policy that has just been passed.
As
Senator,
far as
do you know if we have a...
Okay.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's just been passed. It's not yet operational. It's not yet operational because the National Advisory Council has not been set up that will implement it. The government has signed off this policy, but they are yet to set up the National Advisory Council on Aging, and the president will need to appoint a chairman for it, and then they will start working. And the council will then have the statutory function of advising the minister on measures and programs for the well-being of older persons, and proposing in particular to the federal government, draft national implementation plans. So it's not yet operational, it's been signed, and therefore we can't even be talking about the policy having, expiring very soon. I think it's going to be there for a long time. And I believe that with the complements of the Older Persons' Rights and Privilege Bill, Dr. Cheluchi, it may interest you to know that there's a lot of similarities, since it's about the same bodies that were working on it. The main thrust, the main substance of the law, which has been passed by Senate and is now for concurrence in the House of Rep, is prohibition of discrimination against older persons. That's why in Part 1, Section 1 of the law, it makes it a crime for any person or institution to discriminate against any person on account of age. And to do that, like you said, to do that, if it's a corporate organization, he will be fined 2 million naira. If it's an individual, he'll be fined 200,000. And the prosecution does not preclude the victim from instituting a civil legal action in addition. All right. And when you look at what are the objectives of the bill, you find that it is similar. The primary aim of the bill is to enhance the quality of life of older persons, protect and strengthen their rights, highlight for public attention some of the challenges confronting the older persons in Nigeria, particularly issues bordering on retirement, social welfare, economic survival, aging and social isolation, addressing the challenges arising from the natural consequences of aging, such as how to meet the health, social, economics of post-retirement life. So you will find a lot of synergy between the law and the policy that has been passed. We're really happy that this bill had a speedy passage in the Senate, because we prepared this bill in Kosropin in 2017. We personally went to the Senate and handed it to the then Senate President, Bukola Saraki, in a ceremony. But thereafter, the bill just vanished. And well, he was confronted with a lot of problems with re-election and all that. And then in 2019, we went back to a senator and he took it as a member's bill. And by March this year, Senate has already passed it. So we are confident that the concurrence in the House of Rep, we pray that it will also be fast so that we can then approach Mr. President, who is an older person himself. And one of the things that has happened recently, and I'm happy that aging is now on the forefront of the banner. People are talking about aging now more than in the past, is because older persons have decided to come out and speak for themselves. You know, as you know, I'm an older person, and a lot of older persons are beginning to see the marginalization and exclusion. Even the SDG excludes older persons in most of the things, you know. So the policy is a welcome document, and the bill, when passed, will complement the policy, and you can be sure that older persons in this country will be very happy. I could tell you some of, when we get there, if you so desire, I will tell you some of the provisions, you know, we are seeking for older persons, you know, in terms of what we consider to be the benefits and the rights for older persons in this country, which covers most of the things that are done in civilized climes. And, you know, once you are over 60 abroad, you know, you have rights and benefits. You know, people treat you with respect, they give you first, they treat you priority service, like discounts and all that. It's all included in this bill. And if you want me to tell you some of the provisions, I will do so.
Please share some of them with us, because I was wondering about it.
Well, in section 3, one of it.
Please.
Hello, shall I continue?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay. It's saying that states that are operating social protection programs shall be entitled to grants from the federal government. So it encourages states to provide social protection programs for their older persons. In the same section 3 clause 7, it says older persons shall be entitled to 50% discount and exemption from value-added tax on medical and dental services diagnostics and laboratory fees in all private hospitals, medical facilities, outpatient clinics, home health care services as determined by the National Health Insurance Scheme. It also says public hospitals shall establish geriatric wards for older persons, meaning that if you go to a federal medical center, there must be a ward designated as geriatric ward so that older persons, when they go to hospital, will not be mixing up with everybody. Such geriatric wards shall be for the exclusive use of older persons. In another section of it, it says the federal and state ministries of health and national health insurance shall institute a national health program and shall provide an integrated health service for older persons. In section 4.8 of it, it says social safety assistance intended to cushion the effect of economic shocks, disaster, and calamities shall be available to older persons. Indigent older persons shall be entitled to a monthly stipend amounting to not less than 50% of the national minimum wage, subject to review every 5 years for the National Assembly. In section 6, it provides that governments shall ensure that older persons enjoy the rights to adequate standard of living, including rights to decide where they want to live. You can't just force an old person and pull the person from village and say he must come to town. The person can sue you that he wants to live with his kids and kins, in the village. And that section, provides for to approve or direct approval to be given to a building that contravenes the building codes, a minimum of 2 million. Now, there's a provision that every building in the next 4 years, when this becomes operational, should become friendly for older persons or for people living with disabilities.
One moment, Oladimeji. Once he finishes, then you can ask your question.
Okay.
All right.
You find that
Yes, you were saying
where there is inaccessibility or barrier to access of older persons to a public building or facility, and a complaint is made to the relevant authorities, failure to take immediate and necessary steps to remove the barrier and make the environment accessible for each day that the defiance continues, the complainant shall be paid 20,000 damage if the violator is a corporate organization, or 10,000 if it is an ordinary person. It also provides that the federal or the state or local government shall include in their shelter programs for social housing needs of the older person, such as establishment of housing units for older persons. It also provides on section 33 that long-term care facilities shall be provided with increased residential facilities under formal building institutions. And it also talks about transportation. Government transport services provided shall make provision for lifts, ramps, and accessibility aids to enhance the accessibility of their vehicles, parks, and bus stops to older persons, including those on wheelchairs. And it just goes on to make a lot of provisions. I don't know what time you have, but it also says that
No, that
at public, there are a lot of provisions here. I can tell you.
I mean, that was
50%
that gives us a
discount
good
of
understanding.
older persons when they travel by air, by road. It does. It does provide all this for them.
That's
Public
awesome.
and private transport establishments shall provide airfares and other transport facilities at discount rates of 50% to older persons. In queues, older persons shall be given first consideration, and as such, and as much as possible, be attended to outside of the queues. Any person in breach of this section shall be liable on conviction to 6 months imprisonment or fine of 50,000, and it says, it goes on and on.
So these provisions are very, very important. And I mean, haven't heard you share some of them. I can see the value in them and why we definitely need them. Let's take the question from Oladimeji. You had a question or a feedback?
Yeah, my own is, firstly, I want to commend our header person that is giving us a lecture on this issue of the bill. Quite appreciative in a way. After all, we got our independence in 1960, and that is 61 years down the drain. This bill is coming now. Well, it's a good development because it is better late than never.
Never.
Yes.
Well, looking at it from the angle of this presentation, this bill can only favor those who are civil servants or those who are in government. How will this bill, I'm Commissar, how will this bill affect common man in our villages and on the streets that has no record? Even government is not having the record of how many aged people we have now. And then we have some that are not even learned in any form. So since there is no, how will I put it now, the census or the figure of the actual aged people that we have in the country, how will the provision be made for those who are not captured at all? Because some aged people are living now as if they were not even part of this country at all. It is the responsibility of individuals to take care of their aged people. All this why. And we should equally remember that I'm talking of the current aged people at one time or the other contributed to the growth of this nation in a way, although they might not be learned, but they have one way or the other contributed to the growth and to the development of this nation. But in the bill now, it's only talking about retired people and then maybe those who are elites and things like that. So I became worried because my father died at the age of 95, and he has never for once have a taste of what the government, what the proceeds of government is in terms of a personal benefit from Nigeria till his death. And I could remember he told me why they wanted to build University of Ife. The then Western region has a way of collecting their tenement rate and all those kind of things, contributing local community development and things like that. All these things are fast fading away, but at the end of the day, when he became old, nothing is coming to him. It is only the responsibility of his children to take care of him. So in this bill now, how will it benefit somebody who has no link at all with maybe job opportunity with the government or with the state or local government or anybody whatsoever? Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir.
Do you want me to respond?
Yes, please.
Thank you, my brother, for your concern, but I want to correct an impression. This bill is not for retired civil servants. It is for all older persons. And that's why it refers to indigent older persons. The thing with older persons is that it's not a homogeneous community. Some older persons are educated, some are rich. I will be 74 in September this year. All right, my mother is 102, going to 3. And so I operate in the older persons category, both in caring for my mother and myself, an older person. So I understand my mother never worked for government. My father, yes, he was an ex-serviceman, fought in the Second World War before he died. But this bill is applicable to all older persons. Even the national non-contributory health insurance we are working on now with government, COSROPIN and other governments, is supposed to be for every Nigerian that is 70 years and above. The desire is to place everybody on health insurance wherever you are located. You are right to saying that we don't have the disaggregated data on older persons. We're working at it, all right? And I want to assure you that once it's a law, which is different from the policy like the lawyer explained to us, if your relation falls into the category that are called very indigent ones, who should earn at least 50% of the minimum wage. Minimum wage now, we're moving from 30 to 38, all right? Meaning that the person must at least be paid 18,000 or 19,000 every month, all right, to survive. If you know that there is a law, you can go to court and your lawyer will make sure government will begin to pay it. You know, that's the difference between policy and law, all right? It becomes a law of the land, and once your right is infringed upon there, you can sue for your right because you didn't make the law. They made the law for you, and therefore it should be applicable to you. So I believe that when, by God's grace, we hope this becomes law, you know, it will boost the morale of older persons. It will give them confidence, and all of them enthusiastically will begin to seek for its operation. Their demand for it will even create the awareness. Yeah. We will have responsibility to make sure that older persons know about this. Already, we've signed an MOU on sensitization on various things with the agency of government that, you know, is responsible for creating awareness. And I believe that once this is signed, it will not be a hidden document. Everybody will know about it. We'll make sure that local governments have it, town unions have it, and that everybody can begin to clamor for its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Cheluchi, do you want to also respond to what Mr. Oladumeji shared?
Yes, and I also had a couple of comments for my fellow panelists, Senator Joko. I think there's no way the bill, which will hopefully eventually and very shortly, hopefully, become an act, will address only one segment of people. I know that one of the key challenges that we have is the fact that, you know, there's always quite a bit of focus on those in the formal sector, issues around pensions and so on, and maybe not as much on those in the informal sector. But I believe, and from listening to Senator Joko, that's really what this bill is trying to address, amongst other things, of course, and ensuring that whichever type of work you do or have done in the past, that you benefit in some way or the other from that act. And hopefully this will also extend to caregivers. I think we need to, we hope that we can become a little bit more radical as time goes on. You know, these things have just come up, and you can hear from him, you know, work and advocacy that has gone into bringing us even to this point. But I think that we also need to push in terms of caregiving. I know many, I'm in my 40s, and many of my, people in my generation are beginning to care for their older ones. And it's really tough to deal with when you have no support whatsoever from your government to help you it just falls on the family. And of course, even in that family, you have all kinds of dynamics. I think the one thing I would also raise, having said that, is the fact that all this work that we have done will also need to be stepped down, sir, to the states and local governments as well, to sensitize them as well. Because as you know, there's only so much that the federal government can do at that level. Many of us live within states. This is where the impact is felt more than at that national level. And that is not to say that that national level isn't important, even to create this atmosphere, show that sensitivity, show that commitment at that level is extremely important. But when you start talking about the direct impact, so for example, as a lawyer, I can say to you that health is something that is on the residual lists in the Constitution. So what that means, of course, is that the National Health Insurance Scheme can be saying whatever it's saying, and I've worked quite extensively on that side of things. But you notice that the states are also passing their own laws now because they refuse to sign up to the national scheme, right? So it's also important to begin to think in terms of engaging with the states to ensure that they too come on board, that they too take these pieces of legislation, because older persons are not on the exclusive list, as you know, right? That they also begin to enact this. Once the template is set, they can enact it in their own states and begin to do the needful. Issues around pensions and all that, you know how it comes also not just at that federal level, but also at the state level and down to the local government level. And I think that's one of the things that I would like to say. One of the other things, and this comes out a bit in the policy, but I think that we need to emphasize it a lot, is the issue of, intersectionality. So we've talked about the issue of gender, or we can't talk about the issue of gender, we can't talk about the issue of persons with disabilities. And so, like you said, sir, older persons are not homogeneous. They come in all shapes and sizes and stripes and colors. And therefore, we need to think in terms of how we actually speak to people where they are. And I'm sure that you are better placed than me. I'm just highlighting that as something that needs to come out quite strongly. Women, for example, who are aging have a whole other issue. You mentioned that you're a caregiver yourself, and you look like somebody who would be a caregiver, right? But you know that in many cases, it's actually women, even the older women, that are also caring, for, other people that are older than them without anybody. I know that because, this is also my personal experience that, I have relatives who are caring for older husbands, who are caring for, their mothers, their fathers who are also old. So those kinds of things, being able to figure out how we can, but this is early days. We're just having these conversations because thankfully we have a policy. We can be saying implement it in this way or that way. So that's a great thing. Yeah. But I thought I would bring that up. And finally, I think I would also say quickly, that plan of implementation, just to link it to what I was saying about intersection, will then capture these things, capture those program of actions. And I think hopefully that's something that we're already working on. I know that we're going to, I was on your website earlier this afternoon, and we're going to come in and join you. We're lawyers and we do stuff on.
Are you talking about our website of cost dropping?
Yes. So I saw that you have a, you have a place where organizations can go register. So we will definitely register. So
yes.
One of the things that I think, is to begin to think in terms of look at that policy and start developing a plan of action and so on, instead of waiting for government. Well, knowing that once this council is set off, you have something to place in front of them to implement that will then capture the specific actions, specific steps that will need to be taken to accomplish these laudable objectives that we have in the policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Dr. Cheluchi, that's exciting to know. And
yeah.
Sorry.
No, continue.
I'm saying, Dr. Cheluchi, it's exciting to know that you are willing to join us. We're looking for people. You know, we are not currently funded by anybody. We are doing everything we're doing on our own to make sure that we leave a legacy, having failed when we were younger to do this. And that's the problem with younger people. If you look at the policymakers in this country now, they are between the ages of 40 and 58, but they don't think about getting old. They are putting nothing in place for older persons. They've forgotten
that's why we're having this conversation.
That's why we're having it.
So
and
we're
many
the
of them
young
are not
people
thinking
that are
about it. And very soon they come and join us and they start complaining. Immediately, those who work in government, they will come to us and say, I retired, they have withdrawn my health insurance on the day of retirement. I've not been paid anything for the next 18 months, you know, and we say, what did you do? You know, I never worked for government, but I think that there is need for us to be forward-looking and think of the generations that will get older after us, so that something will be left to benefit them. And I appreciate you in arts having this discussion. It's exciting to know that you are thinking of the protecting the rights of older persons. I appreciate it.
Yes, because we understand that as much as we have older people now, we are also going to get older, and then we also have to put systems in place for the generations that are coming behind us as well. So that's why we are also excited about the policy and the changes that are coming. I really loved what you said, Dr. Cheluchi, about involving state level and local government and just sort of filtering down the layers like that, so that we start getting that conversation down at the level that the people engage with daily. And I think that that's a very important fact. Mr. Oladimeji, you have your hand raised. You wanted to say something.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's not that one is pessimistic about this policy. And I want to, in fact, thank the effort already put in place up to this level. Because if we don't start something, there is no way we can from there move to the next level. Likewise, I want to thank Nahcon. So, Sister Oyin, God bless you. So, actually, my own grounds is that our senator said that one thing about this generation of youth was that they cared not about the older ones. I beg to disagree with that, because it is quite different from when you are this age of ours, although I'm 52 now. But one thing that I discovered is that I didn't mean that this trend has been being included into education we receive from primary to secondary and things like that. It will have been part and parcel of our life. The people ahead of us made a very terrible mistake for ignoring certain things. Even some of them that are retired, while they were in active service, they failed to put some things in place, and which at the end of the day, by the time they retired, they now suffered what they refused to do while they were the active service. So thank God you said you were never at any point in time a civil servant or things like that, working on your own. All well and good. You coming up with this kind of policy is something that is very, very good, and it's a welcome thing that I believe at this point in time that we are hearing about it now, we need to rally around it and then equally inform people about it, so that together we can get to that promised land that all of us are looking for. Now, my question now is that how do we make this policy effective at the level of, because now even those that are in this active service now, the government is not paying them salary. Some government are not even paying full salary as I'm talking with you. And some, they are owing backlog of salaries not being paid when the people, when somebody is still in active service, talk less of when the person will now be retired. So there is something that is wrong with the policy of this nation outrightly. In somewhere abroad, it is a crime for anybody to owe anybody or not to pay as at when due. But in this country, with all the lawyers and all the people that we have on board, even when you go to court and you are given the something, you will still not even get the justice. So that is, it is quite painful, and I don't really know how to figure it out, and how it's not that I'm pessimistic, but that is my area of fear. Thank you.
I understand your pain, Mr. Ladimeji. Thank you for sharing. First off, I want to just speak into that. The first part is that when you say that the people that are older now did not make plans when they were in active service, particularly those in civil service, I think that you forget that as they were in the system, the society was changing with them. And once you're in the rat race, it's really quite hard to have a long-sighted view. And if you think about what we had in the system we had in place before all this urbanization that has happened, and that's really what has changed things for us. People took care of their elderly ones. They lived with them. And so that was the structure. We did have a structure, but it just wasn't the structure that we are trying to implement now. But because our lifestyles have changed, technology has changed things, moving to Lagos or moving to cities, moving outside of, all of those things have added to it. And that is why this is happening. This conversation is happening now. So it's not as bad looking as we did. My mom too, when she was in the Lagos State Civil Service, and she's like, oh, if she had known that this is how things would be after she retired, they would have done more while they were there. But their mind was on her father lived with her. She took care of her father. So that was what, so that was the system that she was thinking of. And then on the other part of people not getting paid, that's another conversation altogether. I don't think that's for this. That's for this panel, but I really understand that, because my one of the concerns that I had about this is, okay, how are we going to even deal with pensions? Because we have issues with pensions. Even now, people receiving their pensions, and even for people within the civil service, I know that they still have to chase around for their pension. So it's a big thing, but I realize that this policy being passed and where we are now shows a forward trajectory. We are moving forward. There's progress being made. So let's not think about what has happened in the past. We learned from that, and let's bring our learnings to the table now. How do we chart this forward? So, which is a good question. How do we move forward? But before I throw another question out there, Dr. John has his hand raised. Do you have a question or a feedback, sir?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, our Senator, Dr. Eze Ajoku, and what's the name of the other lady that spoke the other time?
Dr.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we appreciate you for the discourse so far and the efforts you have put in place. Just like Mr. Ladimeji said, you see, many of us, I don't call myself a civil servant anyway, because I'm not a servant to anybody. It's true that I receive salary, yes, but I pay, I sweat it out to collect that money. And it is as if it's equal to working as a laborer, as a bricklayer, and collecting token at the end of the day. It is service in exchange. So I am not a service to anybody. But where we are going is this. I started teaching 1986. I'm still teaching now. Although in the university, I started from primary school, but haven't taught for 36 years. If I am retiring tomorrow, if I am retiring tomorrow for 36 years, I wouldn't be able to take my gratuity, my lump sum for the next 5 years. And we're talking about tomorrow. You didn't build my today. You want to build my tomorrow. Is it possible? It's not feasible. People are mentally, they are suffering really. And you have bastardized their today and part of tomorrow. And we are now saying when we retire, there's going to be better life. There's no better life tomorrow if you don't help our today. So the whatever bill that is being sponsored will also be like other bills that have been, we have good policies, good bills, but the implementation is wrong. Even the people that put it together, by the time they want to implement, they will brush them aside. Senator, you will bear me witness. They will put them aside. The people that know what they really wanted to do, by the time the implementation is out, you will see them being brushed aside. So now let me give you an instance. Some 30 years ago, federal government was removing money from our salary, housing fund. Eventually they stopped that thing. We didn't have a refund. Now they have started again when as we went on strike, that we don't want this, your housing fund. Don't give us anything because you don't have plan for our future. I used to tell my children, I said, government don't have plan for your future. They don't have for me and they don't have for you. So don't ever waste your time. So we need to get that one right, sir. If we want to do anything, unfortunately, the people that are passing this bill, it is because they know that they are getting to that level now. They are now planning for themselves, and politicians are just fond of that. Whatever will benefit them is what they really push. If you are retiring as a governor and you are collecting, you will be collecting that huge amount of money, and somebody will teach in a classroom for 30 years. He must have affected lives more than a governor. No teacher in Nigeria that is not better than a governor. No teacher in Nigeria that is not better than a senator. I want us to get that right, because he must have affected lives from day 1 to 35 years, and he will live without collecting 5 million naira. My sister, that's injustice. So we need to see it from that perspective. How do we help those people that are retiring? If government is not paying them now and they will now retire, where is tomorrow for them? Somebody getting to age 60, 61 is having stroke after retiring. So I want us to look at the riddle, sir. I think you heard me.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Dr. John.
It's a good program, it's a laudable program, but the execution, if they leave it in the hand of people who will do it well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. Thank you.
Dr. John.
Senator, do you want to respond?
Well, the last speaker,
Mr. Oladimeji,
yes, talked about the fact that we are not teaching younger people to know about aging. That is not taught in secondary schools and universities, which is correct. And one of our member organizations is pushing for the study of gerontology in the university, to put it in the university programs now, because you will agree with me that if youths begin to talk about aging, they will have a better perspective and relate to older persons better. We are lucky that we have our traditional cultures that respects an older persons. But you also find that these days, with money in the hand of a young boy, he has no regard again for anybody. But if we can go back and get gerontology into our studies at the university and some secondary school levels, it will help a long way. Now, you've also said that, and I agree with you, that the problem in this country is not a lack of policy, but it is lack of implementation. And even as we now have this aging policy, those who will implement it, appointment, not those who are concerned and want to see something done, you know? So that is government of the day. And that's why some of us who are in NGOs and CSOs have become a pressure group to remind government of what should be done. And our group, you know, which is a coalition of all the other groups working on aging, we're doing it and trying to get government to understand that these things are necessary. I can tell you, we have a lot of advocacy programs going on now. Like the issue you raised, you stop teaching after 35 years or whatever, and nobody pays you any gratuity, and you're asked to go home. We were about 3 weeks ago in the office of the head of civil service, that is on an advocacy visit, to plead the cause of civil servants who are retiring and how they retire. You know, and one of the things they told us they are considering also is to be able to pay some gratuity. Because now when a civil servant is retiring, the day he retires, they cut off his health insurance. They will not give him any money until 14 to 18 months after that. That's why many of them die after retirement. Many people die after retirement. Some relocate to their villages and they just die as a pauper, you know? So we have a very pitiable situation that confronts the older person now. And it is time that all of us rally around each other to fight for it. Yeah. You know, I'm glad for this program because some of you have never heard of the Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons. I was surprised that Dr. Cheluchi had, you know, the time to be able to look at our website. That is very commendable. A lot of people don't even know what we're doing, and many of us are not sleeping, you know, because of the problems, because they confront us left and right. All issues, when we hear about issues, this old person is being done this, we start fighting for them, you know, and we're doing that out of our pocket allowances because nobody is funding us, nobody is supporting us, but we believe in the cause, and the zeal and enthusiasm and the interest is what is propelling us, you know, to go out. During COVID, we were all out there, you know, distributing COVID to the homes of older persons on our data list. Mm-hmm. You know, we opposed the Ministry of Humanitarian for gathering people, older persons, in the field to distribute. And we complained. They responded to us by giving us some palliatives to take to the homes of our members, older persons. And we did that with our own resources, distributing them to homes. So if we have more volunteers across board, and that's why we're trying to see if we can set structures across. We were in a synod of the Catholic Church the other day to talk to them to set up structures in their local churches of older persons associations or fellowship of older persons. Because if there's information, we pass it to them, they can pass it more. So we're looking for opportunities, and that's why I was raising my hands for Dr. Cheluchi, who says they will join us as lawyers. And we need help. We need those who can interpret for us. I'm not a lawyer. I'm an accountant, you know, and we need people who can tell us this is what you should do with this and that. So we need all hands on deck for the benefit of older persons. It may be me, it may be you, it may be your mother, your father, it may be someone, but these people are part of Nigerians. You see that the Child Right Act protects the children. You know, you have the Women Act, you have the youths, but nobody is protecting the older persons and those living with disabilities. Even the disability bill is not been implemented. So you find that, you know, older persons that fall into the category of all these people are suffering in this country. And there are older persons without children. There are older persons who have educated their children, they have no jobs. All right, so it's a very, very serious matter we're talking about. And I appreciate the fact that you from arts is talking about rights of older persons.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Senator Ajoko. This has been, we really value your inputs there. We have to round up this session to go to part 2. Dr. Cheluchi, any last comments? Not necessarily last comments, because we have the second part, which you can still contribute to.
I won't take any time. I won't take any time at all. We're very happy to come in and work with you, not on a completely voluntary basis. This is a cause that is very dear to my heart. As I had mentioned earlier, my dad is turning 84 this year. He has age-related macular degeneration, which has robbed him of much of his sight. So this is not it's not just a professional thing, and I know that many of us across the country have the same experience. And then you are there and the person is saying, no, they're telling me to go and stand in line somewhere for my pensions and so on. Let me just quickly thank you, sir, for coming to talk to us about this. I think it's amazing. Thank you, Oyinko, for moderating this, and to the entire team for thinking about this and putting it on the front burner today. Thank you so much. Please, I've asked for you to send me your number privately on the chat. Senator, please. Thank you, sir.
Yes. We're going to the part 2 where we're having Ms. Gabby Williams.
Send you a copy of the bill and the policy.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for your time today, sir. So we're having the part 2 of our discussion, and for this session, we're having Ms. Gabby Williams and Ms. Gabby Williams, who is a trustee with the Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation. And then we have Dr. Ifeanyi Unsofo, who is a director of policy and advocacy with the Nigerian Health Watch. Can we spotlight them? I know Ms. Gabby Williams has been here.
Hi.
Hello, Dr. Ifeanyi.
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you
for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you for joining us. So while we're waiting, hello, Ms. Gabby Williams. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So I know you've been here since the beginning of the session. So I'm wondering if you have any feedback onto the conversation that we've just had and some of the questions that were placed on the floor. For this session, we're going to be talking more about the policy and how you think implementation and strategy could go. But what are your thoughts on the first half of the conversation that we've had so far?
It was Dr. Eze Ajoku, Senator, was so passionate and very uplifting, and Cheluchi was also, who's a member of our faculty, was also encouraging about how she, as a health law and health policy expert, views the new policy on aging. I love the summary. I love the emphasis on age-friendly environment. I love the emphasis on the collection of data. I loved the improved access to social services, disability access. Everything I heard in the summary from Dr. Eze, it touches on everything the jugular of the issue. The destigmatization, the ensuring healthy aging, with the changing perception, the emphasis on that, it's right up our street. If I were to tell you why we set up Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation. My background is, the humanities and the arts. It's not because I'm a clinical medical practitioner or like Cheluchi, a policy studies wonk. I'm not. I'm the daughter of a sufferer, someone, well, he is late now. We set the foundation up a year before my father passed on his 80th birthday. And so listening to Senator Eze Ajoku, it was and talking about the synergy between the policy and the bill. And I love the idea of privileges and rights. I thought it was extremely ambitious. It's a utopian ideal, but I have no problem with utopian ideals. I think that what we're lacking in this world are visionaries. But when we have this kind of utopian ideal, we have to have the groups that are prepared to action it. But we can't do it without the resources and the support and commitment of government. So, the interaction between, CBOs, as Cheluchi talks about, local level, state level, CBOs, NGOs, government bodies, it's really important that that kind of framework is developed and the resources are given to action the content of policy. Yes, I think that we're already responding to the call. I mean, even though the National Policy of Aging, it's this year, isn't it? Dr. Eze, it's this year.
It was this year, it passed in February.
Yeah, we started Gabby Williams Foundation in 2017 on my dad's 80th birthday. So we're still new, but that's very much the spirit, the same spirit in which this was crafted. Is a spirit that inspired Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation, yes. So my feedback is, very positive, but Dr. Eze, while we're dreamers, we mustn't forget political will is a reality. And this is for you as well, Nahcon. Political will is a reality. You know what I mean? And yes, we don't want to look in the rearview mirrors for too long, but we do have to pay attention to that because Dr. Eze talked about the Child Rights Act. And your mother, Nahcon, knows a lot about what I was doing before Gabby Williams, because your mom was one of my greatest supporters in sponsoring a child. And the Child Rights Act, that was my thing. We developed manuals, we were working with government, but they would not release any money. In fact, our fund is the Human Rights Fund of the Embassy of France. They got tired of, the statutory, the prescriptive visit to government. They come and fund NGOs like ours. And then they say, okay, let's go and visit the local state government, and to talk about this so they can roll it out. We're funding the pilot. We'll give, let's go and make a presentation to Lagos state government so they can take it up from there. But it was always so disappointing that they just lost interest and they decided, you know what? We're tired of all these visits. They're not generating any more, any really positive results. The government is happy to send people to support.
I lost the link and I'm back. Did you ask me any questions?
Dr. Eze. Yes. No, I was just talking about political will. Sorry, Oyinka, I'm talking to you. I finished. I'm just saying that I was giving my feedback to everything that you said. And I loved it, but I think that we shouldn't lose.
I lost audio. I lost audio.
That's it. Oyinka, I've answered your question.
Thank you for that. Ms. Dr. Ifeanyi, what are your thoughts on the policy, particularly since you're a director of policy, so you're really into policies and all?
Okay, so to be honest, I actually came towards the end of the last session. So I
George.
But have you read the policy for the rights of the aged that has been recently passed?
No, I have not.
Okay. I'm not quite sure how to bring you up to speed on that. But the government has just recently passed a bill, a policy that is to basically protect our aged ones in Nigeria. And the goal, I think, let me just read this last part, which says what the national policy vision is to have a society where older persons are guaranteed security, independence, participation, comprehensive care, and self-fulfillment and dignity. So that's the cocoa of the policy. And
Yeah.
also, the first session we talked about just basically have a general understanding of the policy and what our expectations could be concerning the kind of rights that could come from it. But one of the things that, while I was reading, I read a bit of it and I kept thinking, how are we going to implement this? And, it was also one of the questions that was brought up in the first session, because Nigeria is great with ideas and we're great with starting things, but how we implement in a very strategic way, and how do we keep it sustainable? So like Ms. Gabby Williams just mentioned as well, that political will is a big thing. It's an important thing. So how do we make this happen while still in our environment where the political will, if it doesn't count as votes or cash for the politician, then it's not going to fly. How do we move forward?
Okay, so thank you again for having me, and thanks for the summary of the goal of that particular policy. So I think first of all, it is to commend the federal government for coming up with a policy on aging and the elderly the way they've done, but also to bear in mind that Nigeria is a federation. So if you have a national policy, the state will have to domesticate it within their own domains. And so as it is now, it's probably just the Federal Capital Territory that particular policy is binding on, because it's part of the purview of the federal government. States will have to look at it and decide to what extent they want to domesticate and implement that policy. But
before you go into that, how does that filter to the state? Who takes it to the state and says, okay, this has been passed at federal level. You guys now have to make it happen at state level, and filters down? Who does that?
So I think on one hand, you've spoken about political will, the commissioners of health or whatever agency of the state government that would implement that particular policy. But on the other hand, civil society, would also push. So civil society organizations that work within this particular space would have to push in the states where they implement their own projects to make sure that the states domesticate. But also in doing that, you would agree with me that states would normally say that, well, we don't have money to do this, we don't have money to do that. So it also falls again on civil society organizations, philanthropic foundations, and individuals to fund this. And because in the whole gamut of issues that we face, needs are infinite, resources are limited. But I think for me, in terms of implementing the policy going forward, I think we also need to kind of redefine the way that we craft our messaging for the kind of for aging and all, and and for the elderly. And what comes to mind? 3 years ago, we had a policy dialogue on this, and one of our speakers was Dr. Ogugwo Osiobu from the National Hospital. She's a geriatrician, one of the few geriatricians we have in Nigeria. She said two things, that really resonated with me. The first thing that she said was that, look, although age is a risk factor for a lot of diseases, it is not a disease. Aging is not a disease. And secondly, aging does not, she said that aging does not begin at 60. It begins at birth.
At birth, yes.
Yeah, so in other words, everybody should be an advocate for aging and issues involving the elderly, because we want to grow old. We want to grow old and see our children and grandchildren and all. So ultimately, once we hit, if we're lucky to hit 60, 65 and above, then we're going to face the same issues that people are within the same age bracket are facing today. So I think if we begin to redefine our messaging to involve everybody, especially the younger, demographic, so that they know that, well, you're heading towards the same issue. So don't look at it that this is their problem. Older people is our problem, because when I get to that, if I'm lucky to live long, I'm going to get to the same age and I'm going to face the same challenges that people are facing. I think it probably help us get a lot more people, so that we can have people pushing from different angles, from different demographics. Yeah.
I like what you said, and it ties into something that Senator Eze had mentioned earlier, which is that we should teach, we should, get the younger generation involved in this conversation. But then he went on to say, maybe I think it was even Mr. Oladimeji, one of the contributors, who said maybe we should, teach it in schools and things like that. Now, I'm not of the opinion, I don't personally agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think that conversation should actually happen at home and in the religious space and, in civil society, not necessarily in the school space. Yes, having a university course for geriatric care, or I forget what it's called. Having a university course is great, but that conversation of the younger ones understanding that, you're going to get old and you need to take care of the older ones. Is that a conversation that should be had in school, or is that a conversation that should be had consciously at home? And I'm going to take that to you, Dr. Williams, Miss Gabby Williams. I remember my grandfather had maybe Alzheimer's or something, but nobody said anything about it. So, there was no understanding. Why are you covering your face? What's that book?
I'm answering your question.
Okay, we can't see it. Is it a book?
Hip Hop, Dementia Clues, Remember the Flow is what we've developed for the little ones in schools. Child-mediated prevention. We want to get them recognizing the symptoms, and we teach them flow. It actually originates in Hip Hop Public Health, a fantastic national NGO, a nonprofit in America, founded by my brother Jide, who you may not know, but I'm sure your mom does, Oyinko. And so we've got the permission to reproduce here. So we've already run one program in schools across Lagos State with them.
So what kind of schools? What kind of schools are you targeting now? Secondary school? Okay, so is it supposed to be part of their reading material, or how are you engaging the students on this?
It's extracurricular. It's extracurricular. I've never been able to pronounce that word.
Extracurricular.
Thank you. So yes, it's just something that the staff, the authorities are very excited about it, and so we have huge cohorts of schools, and we have young people working with us and faculty working with us, and our senior officer Peter Olaniyo, and it's prescribed. It's the whole, it's beautiful. It's a whole comic, and teaches about flow. F for forgetting, L for losing, O for overlooking, W for wandering or needing to write things down. So we introduce them to the flow, and it's child mediated because the children need to recognize the signs and symptoms.
Yeah.
They also, in our community, children spend a lot of time with the elders, because of the way our societies are structured.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to have this kind of education. They may even spend more time with grandma and grandpa than their parents do.
Yes.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to really push at the moment, child-mediated interventions through recognizing the signs. So yes, that Lagos State is working very closely with us on that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Dr. Ifeanyi, what's your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Ms. Gabby Williams. And I think what's really also very important here is how you craft the messaging. And let me explain what I mean. So one other thing that Dr. Ogugo said in that particular conference that we had is that, look, the kind of health issues you face as an elderly person is dependent on how you live your life as a young person. So for instance, that means that we need to teach young people about how to physically fit, how to eat nutritiously. Do you understand? All those kind of things, because, point them that if you don't do all that, these are some of the challenges you're going to face. That's on one hand, health-wise. Yeah, health-wise. But so at the time I joined the last session, one of the speakers, the professor from the university, was talking about, working for so many years, 36 years, teaching, your pension and all. Also letting young people know that how do we fight to ensure that elderly people get their pension? Because if we have a functional pension system that is, foolproof as far as, embezzlement is concerned, that means that when it gets to my turn, I'm going to have something you know,
To
it's
deal
left for
with.
me. Yeah, in that when I become elderly. So it's almost like we need to appeal to people's sense of selfishness. Let me do it because I know
Yes,
that
because I'm going to need it.
yeah, eventually.
So, I mean, like the policy has 8 strategic objectives. And this one that we're talking, what we're talking about actually feeds into one of them, which is, let me read that to you. It's actually the first one: to cause a fundamental positive change in perception, attitude, and paradigm about aging, old age, and inclusive society. So my question towards that, as I read that, was why is there so much stigma towards older people or towards the aging process? Could it be because of a lack of understanding of the process of what aging truly is? And, you know, and some of the illnesses that older people also have, like Alzheimer's, maybe it's the lack of understanding of what Alzheimer's is. So when we're now having books like this that can teach us, okay, that can teach us from an early age what the symptoms are. I know, but what I'm trying to, because if this kind of question, because it feeds into one of the strategic objectives of the policy, if we need to have a way that when we're presenting it, like you said, when you're presenting that tool, it or the language and you're crafting the whole language, it's easy to implement. So now if we're just, how are we going to, if we're going to have this conversation in schools now, it has to be, how are we going to do it in a way that it's a 360? So it's not just that we're talking about older people. So I like the way you said that, okay, if you add it, if we talk about a wellness or a healthy living lifestyle, so that maybe it's an after school curriculum, or maybe it fits into I think we have a health study subject in school or something, as in, so that it makes it easier for government when we take that to government to say, okay, this is the way that we can start teaching young people or desensitizing young people about the aging process, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just thinking, how do we tie it? Because I personally, until you showed me your book, I personally thought it was a conversation that should be had at home, because that's where people engage their grandparents and stuff. So I'm thinking mommy should be telling the child that this is what grandma is going through and we need to take care of grandma type situation is what I was thinking. But why is there so much stigma at older people? So I put that again out there, those two questions.
Can I take this one?
One moment, Mr. Ladimeji.
Can I take this?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think it should be addressed as a human rights thing. I think what we need to do is let our children start looking at the world through the lens of human rights. There's an inherent dignity to everybody, whether they can be productive workers and earn or not. You're important and valuable simply because you're a human being. That is the point of departure, and everything devolves from that. If you don't look at it through a human rights lens, you're going to get a whole plethora of problems of stigmatization because they can no longer earn. And they can no longer function. In the case of people like my father, who's, degenerative condition, they are less able to contribute at all. Even speech, you have to do everything for them, feed them, everything. So does that make daddy less valuable as a person? So if you don't approach it immediately from the get-go as a human rights thing, you're going to have a lot of those problems. So we need to reorient people to thinking in terms of the inherent value of every human rights. Simply because the stigma thing, I think it's a mixture of lack of knowledge. And also, I think when you're living in a culture as I'm a Christian, so obviously any religion is supernatural, it's supernatural. I mean, there's a supernatural dimension. But if that supernatural dimension is not circumscribed by a set of moral principles grounded in the faith, if it's just this supernatural thing just hanging just out there, then you're going to have, combined with lack of knowledge, you're going to have the kind of stigmatization that can lead to incredible violence to these people, to anyone who can't look after themselves, anyone who may have mental health problems. They don't even have to be Alzheimer's patients. So it's a combination of those things. And I think that, yes, I mean, that is why we're out there in communities. Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation, we are always producing these IEC materials. This is the very first one we produced. And in this, we've got this shocking case study. And people think, what? So is this for real? It's about a case study about Madame Grace Alabi. And it is shocking. Can I just read it very, very quickly? It's tiny.
Yes, please.
Now, 72-year-old mama and grandmama, she been done achieve many things. She retire as teacher. She begin claims say she fit do things where she never do before, or no even fit do. And she dey once walk about for the area where she dey live. Her family been always dey put eye on top am until one night when she hide, comot for house and she no come back. She later show face for another far area for night. And now for there, people wey dey stay that area talk say she be witch wey dey fall from sky. After she answer, say yes, she be witch. When the people for the area gather ask am say you be witch, dem beat, stone and burn am to death. The true story be say she got Alzheimer's disease and she be no fit remember who she be.
Oh, wow.
So this is one of the IEC materials in Pidgin English. So we're out there. We want to translate this kind of IEC material into as many languages as possible to let them know the logical conclusion of a belief in supernatural and lack of knowledge, and which can end in that kind of really shocking violence. So that's a major crusade for us. You know, the demystification and destigmatization of Alzheimer's, and letting them know the difference between the normal senior moments the age get, and the difference between that and the onset of dementia, talking about the 7 stages. So we're out there with information in very specific ways. We don't do any grammar, we don't do anything like that. We really get it out.
Break it down.
Yes,
you did. Oh, you satisfied my question or what I had. How about you, Dr. Ifeanyi? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to add is,
don't worry, we have many more questions.
Yeah, so again, bringing the health dimension to this, the one thing I'm going to add to what she said is we also need to look at it from a health equity lens. And the health equity lens is ensuring that everybody gets the kind of healthcare that meets their particular circumstance. So for instance, why is it almost impossible for you to buy a health insurance plan for an elderly person in Nigeria? There are all sorts of bottlenecks. The HMO will start telling you all sorts of reasons. They have these, they shouldn't have pre-existing illness, all sorts of things. Why? You know, and because we know that, you know, because of that particular age group, they are more prone to all sorts of communicable diseases. How do we ensure that they get the healthcare that they need, that meets their circumstance? And that is why, again, it is important for us to involve the younger generation, so that on one hand, because of healthy living, exercise, fitness, nutrition, we can prevent people, you know, having those communicable diseases, a lot more people having when they get to be elderly. But for the few that would end up having them, we also should also have a plan to ensure that they are covered and they are not running all over the whole place to, you know, to get their blood pressure estimated or be treated for diabetes, because, you know, they don't have the kind of resources that they had as, you know, when they were much younger.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. Mr. Oladimeji, you had a question or feedback? Mr. Oladimeji, are you there? Okay, so while we're waiting for Mr. Oladimeji, I had some questions to some of the objectives, strategic objectives. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for your being different to what I first said, that yes, the younger ones need to be taught right from their distance. You know, it is easier to teach a small child something that will remain in his heart for life. And it is hard for an adult to assimilate quickly as children will grab things. And based on what the scripture says, that teach your child the way of the Lord right from their when they are still very young. that they will not depart from it, you know, is something that is very, very important in the life of humanity. And then if you don't tell them today,
I'm using your own system now.
Hello?
Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Hello?
Continue, sir.
Okay. So if you don't give them the knowledge they need to have today, you know, they will grow up becoming something else. For instance, now if you look at the trend on our streets now is that ask a small child, what do you want to become? Some of them will tell you, I want to become a Yahoo boy. Why? Because of what they have been seeing, the kind of lifestyle that those ones have been living, and believing that, oh, whether legitimately you acquire your money or illegally is something that is immaterial. So that is giving them impression that, oh, becoming a Yahoo person is the best way of life. But now, let them know that, yes, you are very young today, and tomorrow you are going to be old. If you don't put certain things in place before your tomorrow, you may end up like so-so person or things like that. That will caution them, and then let them have even feelings for elderly ones, and then, you know, being able to prepare for their own time, so that they won't have the same problem that the aged ones are having now. I want to thank that madam that brought the book. In fact, listening to what the little that she has read to us, and that we need more of this in our society, so that with that analogy of a thing, we'll be able to, you know, pass the message across to the right channel at every point in time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Oladimeji.
Yeah.
Do you have any response for that, Mr. Ifeanyi? You want to say anything to that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think he's really made the point. One thing I need to add very briefly is, because of the story that you know, Ms. Williams read, I think it really tells us that we need to involve our religious leaders in this advocacy, because Nigeria is a deeply religious country. You know, once people hear witch, you know, they set you on fire. So I think we need to get them, because these are men and women that are revered and respected by the people. When this messaging also comes from them, it's going to help us move forward.
Ms. Gabby Williams, do you work with religious institutions? And if you do, what has the response been? You're muted. Oh, you cannot unmute?
Okay, can you hear me? No.
Yes.
Well, yes. I mean, that's part of the plan. I mean, that's part of the plan to really take it through. And I think that whenever we do anything for my father, my brother, who is a neurologist and the board secretary of Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation, always uses the opportunity of being in the church to give a little sort of segment to talk about the Alzheimer's and dementia. But we're going to be going into that field. And we had at the memorial lecture 2 years ago, last year, Professor Gwenga Ogedegbe from New York University, who came to give us the keynote. And that was a major strategy, that he advocated, you know, really closely working with faith-based, because they dominate our world. You know, they have the hearts and minds of the people right up and down the economic ladder. And that, so that's really where we're going to go as well. Yes, to the, because we need to.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually a big thing in some of the sessions that we've had during the week, the role that religious organizations and religious leaders have to play, and the huge role that they have to play in removing stigma and just helping people with their understanding of different situations, you know, disabilities and things like that, that are affecting our mental health or our mental well-being as a nation. There was something else that I wanted to touch on, which is still part of the strategic objectives of the policy. So the second objective of the policy is to guarantee an improved quality of life for older persons in Nigeria and strengthen the traditional support systems for older persons. So my question is, when they say they want to strengthen the traditional support system, do they mean the family? And then how do they strengthen the support system? How would that happen?
Ifeanyi, do you want to take it?
Oh, okay, yeah, fine. Let me take a shot at it.
And I'll come in afterwards.
Yeah. So again, when I joined towards the end of the last session, I think Senator Ajoko actually mentioned something like this about. So for us, as Nigerians, as a community, there's still a healthy dose of respect for the elderly. But again, how do you ensure that that really permeates the society, especially if you look at all the economic challenges that we're having, all the insecurity that we're having. So how many people are able to provide the kind of economic support that their elderly members of their family require at every point in time? How do you even travel now to go and visit your elderly, parents at home?
Yeah.
When you bear in mind all this insecurity, whether bandits or kidnappers along the way and stuff like that. So yeah, so we need to really, consider all this, to ensure that, that second strategic objective is implemented. But again, I think another aspect to it is that, look, if I'm being very honest, to what extent do I even go to my village now, even if all the security issues were not affecting us now?
Exactly.
Because, even previous urban, rural centers are becoming urbanized, and that really affects the quality of life of the elderly. The elderly people that could just previously get up from their houses, walk, 5 kilometers down the road, serene environment, no vehicles, and all, to go and see, their friends or family members now cannot afford to do that because the roads are paved. You have all sorts of crazy drivers driving recklessly. They could be knocked down. They may have Alzheimer's. They may have dementia. They could get missing. What happened to that? Elderly woman could happen to them. So we need to also think about, as cities urbanize, how do we plan our cities? Urban planning. How do we take the needs of the elderly into consideration while we also embrace development? So it kind of, so what that also tells me is that implementing this particular policy is also multi-sectoral. How do you bring in other sectors outside the health sector, for instance, or outside the social sector, to ensure that the needs of the elderly people, so that when you get that time of your life, you have, and I like the way it is captured in that policy, improved quality of life. Not the one that if somebody now asks you, grade your quality of life, you actually wish you were dead instead of living at that point in time. This is something we have to get against. Ms. Williams, over to you.
Thank you, fine. I like the part with, how can we reach? First, the word tradition is not just a rural urban thing. I mean, it's encompassing. It's just the historic structures that we have in place for looking after one another. But talking about just even bringing in the element of the rural, it's very important, because we have a case study project at the Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation. And one of our interviewees, it was heartbreaking. It was so difficult for him because he's in the village. Or at least he was in the village at the time, looking after his very elderly father. It was very difficult because all his relatives, his siblings, were all in the city. So he was one that was doing everything. And it's a real village. They just don't have any resources. And the only time he had any real respite was when they had these sort of festivals. He said, talked about the Yam Festival, and they all come back home for some festival. Remember that one? I'm talking to my senior officer. You know, it was just incredible the sacrifice he made, because all the others were living their own lives in the city, and he was just left with his old man in the village, no support whatsoever. So I was very encouraged by Senator Eze telling us that states will be encouraged and incentivized to provide social protection programs. I think they will be incentivized even financially, states, so they can reach, it's a state thing, they can reach into their own rural communities and provide the cash. I think he was talking about cash in the bill is prescribed for cash grants and stipends for people in difficult circumstances. So, and you know, and long-term care with increased residential facilities. So hopefully that will, the rural communities will be caught in that kind of dragnet. So that's what I can say. From the perspective of families looking after their loved ones who are either very aged or have dementia, we believe that one of the ways of alleviating the suffering of the sufferer is by alleviating the suffering of the caregiver. And so we're putting a lot of emphasis increasingly on caring for the carers, you know, insisting that they have respite, insisting that they do these things, insisting that they sit down with their siblings and develop rosters so that they can have time to care for themselves. This is a healthcare need. It's not a luxury. And you have to have it. And fatigue is nothing to be guilty about. Because yes, you know, so it's symbiotic. Your well-being and the patient's or the sufferer's well-being or the elder is directly connected. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on that. And then we're also, you know, the National Social Protection Policy, the existing one is being revised at the moment. I'm not very abreast with policy and laws, but we were invited as an NGO to contribute to the revision. And I really stressed occupational therapy. Cheluchi is here. Cheluchi was very, very supportive in helping us formulate recommendations. Occupational therapy is very dear to my heart. We're very fortunate in Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation that we have an occupational therapist who is our first cousin and also a faculty member. And on the basis of her Q&A that she did with caregivers, both formal and informal, we put this together, meeting the needs of the dementia patients and the caregivers, in fact, home safety and care plan, where we show them how to manage the living space, all the spaces from the kitchen to the bathroom, sitting rooms, staircase, bedrooms, in a way that really makes life easy for the caregiver and for the aged person. It's not just sufferers, even anybody elderly, they lose mobility, they lose acuity, and assisted daily living plans, etc., etc. So, you know, occupational therapy, which addresses the spiritual, the cognitive, the physical, we want to see that mainstreamed into any policy. And so we're really pushing that at the moment as well. Yes, so I hope I answered.
Yes, that's really important. As in, I mean, the content or the educational content that you're putting together is very, very, very invaluable. But I mean, I love what you said about the caregivers, and not, you know, because a lot of now we're having more and more professional caregivers, even though we still need to train them. There's still a lot of training that needs to go into for professional caregivers, but then even the traditional family caregivers, they also then need to be trained as well. So it's not just, oh, I'm taking care of my grandma. You know, grandma has specific needs. And then that part of fatigue, that is so important. I mean, I know so many people who, in taking care of their parents who have been ill, you know, there's that, you know, there are times you get frustrated with them. There are times you get angry about the situation, and then they start feeling guilty because they're angry and stuff like that. And, you know, I guess this kind of information that, you know, it's okay to be upset, but you need to take time to disengage, to re-engage. It's very, very important. How can we get some of this, your material? Do you have soft copies that people can download from your website or something?
No, come into the office. Come into the office and, you know, see the senior officer. We are very, very jealous of our materials, but at the same time, we're very generous with them. Come into the office and talk to us. And yes, we disseminate like that, really. And also our website is pretty informative. If you go to the Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation.org, is a phenomenal, I say it myself, it's a great resource. So there's a lot of really specific information. Yes.
Awesome.
But come into the office on Nahcon.
I will, I still will. So we're coming to the end of this session. I have one more question for you, and which is, while it is true that many older people need assistance, some of them are not healthy and all, but we still have a large number of them who are healthy, who are secured economically. They have skills and resources that they can still contribute to society. And so how do we harness that for just for us, for society and national development? How do we harness that? Because a lot of them, when they retire, they go off and they do their own thing. But how do we pull them to let them know that, you are still very relevant to society? We need you, even if it's some kind of mentoring. I don't know, but you're nodding. You're saying you're nodding yes. So what do you think? You answer first. How do we do this?
So I think a very easy way to do that is to encourage volunteerism, after retirement. Because, the elderly have acquired so much experience, expertise, over decades. So by the time you retire, it's almost like, somebody's waiting for you to
kill over.
Yeah. But if we have, an organized way of, of even saying, okay, who are the people, especially the people who are employed within the organized private sector as well as government, who are the people retiring this year? What experiences do they have? What skills do they have? What are the gaps existing within our own domain, within our own state, that we feel they can provide, especially now with COVID-19 and how it has exposed the ability for us to have all sorts of virtual meetings like we're having. So an elderly person based anywhere can provide all sorts of support without necessarily, leaving his or her, domicile to go elsewhere to do that. So that volunteerism is key. But I also understand that, or appreciate the fact that to do that, you need to have some kind of organized system of knowing who is retiring, what skills do they have, where are the needs, where can they volunteer? Because you know how it is, once, because I think that part of the problem, at that particular age is that it's almost like you feel that you're useless, and that on its own weighs on you mentally, the mental health issues that you're going to have, God knows, the different dimensions that they will come. But just knowing that when you retire from active service, you have opportunities to contribute again to national development, to changing society, to contributing to the body of knowledge. I think that on its own, it kind of gives you a new lease to life. It's almost like, okay, you're ready to go again. And we have to find a way of that happening. And I'm sure there are lessons from other countries where, where elderly care is much more organized, to learn from.
We've lost Senator Ajoko. It would have been great to hear what the Coalition of Societies of Rights of Older Persons of Nigeria have, in place for something like this. What do you think, Ms. Gabby Williams? What do you think towards how can we get older people involved?
Senator, talking about Senator, I'm glad because that's the first person I thought of. When he was telling us about the efforts they're making to get this galvanized, the national non-contributor health insurance coverage, really galvanize that. And he was saying that the lack of disaggregated data on older persons is a real impediment. So it's a real barrier to participation. So it's a barrier to, to assessing and making this coverage thing happen. It's also a barrier to participation. But participation is dear to my heart. the participation of older people, the participation of little children. That was a big thing when I was very active with Sponsor a Child, and I developed tools on, implementing the participation rights of children. And the first big event we had in Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation was to implement the participation rights of elderly people and dementia sufferers in elder care institutions. We worked with volunteer visual artists. We worked with arts in medicine, and that's how we know Kunle and now Julius. And they, together with Fumi Akindejoye, our former senior officer, put together the most delicious program where these elders were painting. These are some of the results of the art workshops with volunteer artists, some of whom were quite famous, and they had a blast. Let's see them painting, let's see them in action, not just we want process. The process was actually more important to us than the results. We just wanted to promote joy. We wanted them to feel they could produce. So these are volunteers, some of our volunteers, but I wanted to show you pictures of them actually painting. Can we have pictures of them actually painting, not just the results? I'm interested in the process. They had a blast. Look at them. I want the painting, the elderly people. Yes, watch them. So they went into these elderly care homes. We had about 15 to 20 volunteer artists, and they had such a lot of fun. So, participation is very important to us. So if we could do more projects, getting them and all these kinds of things, from board games to arts and crafts, they were beautifully exhibited. And it was just such a lovely, and then we also had instrumental music too for the brain. Yes. So we had the Vesta violins coming in. This was all with arts in medicine. That's how we became so friendly with your people, Kule and Julius. And so that was our first major event. It was an elders participation event. So yes.
That was awesome. That's awesome. Seeing those images is so good. I know, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the conversation that we have had. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We'll have to round up at this point. Any last words you want to share with us?
Thank you to Oyinkan for excellent moderation, for being so interested in everything we have to say. Bless you. Nice to meet you, Fine. Nice to meet Senator Eze. And it's such an important thing. It's lovely to know we're having this conversation so seriously. Acheluchi Oyemelukwe, are you still there? Thank you so much for supporting Gabby Williams Alzheimer's Foundation, and for your expertise and your passion for healthcare policy and health law. Yes, it was wonderful to be included. Thank you to Arts in Medicine. Yes, and I caught bits and pieces of the last few days, and very vibrant. Congratulations to all of you.
Very, very vibrant. That's exactly what it has been, very vibrant. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Any last words for us, Dr. Ifeanyi?
No, I mean, just to thank you again, and thanks, Kunle, for inviting me. And, if there's anything that I'm really very passionate about, is universal health coverage for everyone. 2018, I gave it my first TEDx talk, and it was titled "Without Health, We Have Nothing." And I really want to see that we find a way of developing a health insurance pool for the elderly in Nigeria. That would really help us deal with all sorts of issues that people have at that age.
Yes, I totally agree. Thank you so much. I mean, like we said, this is the beginning of something new that is coming. The pattern of this policy shows that, okay, at least we have the government's ear there. It's there in the atmosphere. We hope that it will filter down to state level and local government level, and then to all the people that would actually go out and do it. But it's a step in the right direction. And I love that on this platform, we've been able to just even all the information from Gabby Williams Foundation, that is so invaluable. And those are the kind of things that we need to be mainstream, so that we can desensitize people to aging and all the challenges that are around it, so that even the younger ones can become advocates for the elderly, which is really what we need, considering the fact that half of our population are below 19. So if we have them pushing for the older ones, then we have something good coming towards us. So thank you again. This is the first conversation here, but we'll have many more. We hope to have many more so that we can see things, so that like Senator Eze said, you know, we have to become pressure points for the government to make sure that the right thing is done at the right time, following right processes, so that they even appoint the right people to implement this policy. That is so key. I know, but it's a conversation that will continue. Thank you everyone for joining us today, for making time out from your day to join this conversation. Please take it to social media, share it with your family and your friends as well. It's a conversation that we really need to keep having. I know. So thank you all. Join us at 5 o'clock. We have a community project that we're going to be presenting later on at 5 o'clock, same link. So please join us then. And then we have some other activities over the weekend. Tomorrow is going to be very exciting. We have some physical activities. So please check out our schedule on our social media, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. This was amazing.
Yes, it was. It was good. It was a good conversation.